Hey Internet, welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction.
This episode of Worldview Everlasting is brought to you by the letter Awesome, the numbers Sweet Action, and Issues Etc. Talk radio for the thinking Christian. issuesetc.org.
And on this week's Greek Tuesday, we're going to look at Mark chapter 10, verses 2 to 16, teachings on marriage and divorce and children, and then more teachings on children that has nothing to do with marriage so much as who we are in God's sight, not because we're so awesome and humble, but because of our sin. Yeah? Stick around. So through Mark chapter 9 and 10 up into 11, between the mountain of transfiguration and the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, Mark has been driving home this one major point, I guess it's two major points, in three separate sections, all revolving around, well again, point one, that we are, none of us, greater or less than in God's sight, that the first is last and the last is first, and we all stand on an equal footing, but that this isn't necessarily a good thing for us. Our footing is misunderstanding, confusion, self-righteousness, arrogance, and hatred of our neighbors.
Oh, snap.
So that so far as God is concerned, we amount to a bunch of infants crying and screaming about our own problem that we created, and basically need to either be shoved out the door or saved from it. Now, of course, he does see us as infants, and he wants to save us from it. That's kind of the point. So here is Jesus saying 3 times, I am here to do this, and the way I'm going to do this is I am going to suffer, and I am going to die, and I am going to rise for you. But so backwards and confused are we that at least in Mark's gospel, nobody understands what he's talking about.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Today, this is going to be driven home again as the Pharisees come to Jesus to test him. Not because they're his friend, and not because they want to see if he knows, but because, remember, these are the guys who think that he has been casting out demons by the power of demons. They believe he is a black magic sorcerer, and so they're trying to trip him up. And so they ask a very difficult question. One which today is still pretty difficult. For all of the yammering that goes on in our culture about marriage, this is the one that'll really get you in trouble everywhere, including in Christian churches, if you speak too loudly about it. I guarantee you almost every pastor that has to read this in the appointed pericope on Sunday is going to be sweating in his boots when he does so. The Pharisees came up to Jesus in order to test him, and they asked him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? Yeah. Now Jesus knows what they're up to, and so he asks them, and now actually he's going to trick them and have them put their foot in it. What did Moses command you, he said, which ought to be a safe bet usually, unless you were there with Moses, knowing how the conversation was going, and as God decided to let Moses do something that you didn't really want, but it's like, yeah, I get it, they're a bunch of hard, stiff-necked people, so we'll make this the rule for their sake, but it's, just going to show what sinners they are anyway. But see, the Pharisees weren't privy to that information, so they just boast. We know what Moses said. He said that the man could write a certificate of divorce for the wife and kick her out. Yeah, you take that. And Jesus responds right off the cuff, because of the hardness of your hearts. Present tense, right? Like you guys right in front of me, you Pharisees who come later, who are the same as humanity throughout all history, because we all are hard. Moses wrote that particular command allowing you to end the marriage that never should end, because what God joins together should not be separated. And he's going to go on to make that point based upon the original understanding of marriage as designed for the created order. He says, from the beginning, God made them male and female. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And just in case you missed it, he'll repeat himself. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. Now, I guess the first thing that comes to mind here a little bit for me is that in our, again, pop yammering world is this all too often spouted refrain that Jesus never said anything about homosexuality. While even that isn't entirely true, you have here Jesus very clearly talking about marriage. The trouble for American Christianity is that the thing he's saying about marriage is something that we want to not have be true, and yet also still be able to condemn homosexuality. And that's where having the text come at us can be a little bit of a challenge. Because we're being accused by it, if not directly, in that I've had a divorce myself, which I haven't, by association with a community that has pretty much come to accept divorce as just the normal thing that happens sometimes, and oh well.
Me fail English? That's
impossible.
Which the text, as far as Jesus is saying, is pretty much not the case, because listen to this. When his disciples don't understand what he's talking about again, here's what he says. Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her, and if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. Now, I know, like, right? It's like, wait a minute, that kind of makes you angry if you've been through a divorce, right? And so here's the challenge. Here's the real issue at hand. Before you read this text about being an adulterer because of divorce, go back and read Matthew chapter 6 with a fairly parallel text. You have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. Yeah, don't do that. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. No! If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. So, yeah, pretty much all of us, men and women, have in one way or another been jealous of someone we're not married to, and therefore, based on what Jesus has said, we are all adulterers, and so if you would try not to be a sinner, pull out your eye. And realize that you can't do that, you're not gonna do that, and even if you did do that, then you'd just be jealous of the people who have eyes. Yeah? Hear what I'm saying? So here is Jesus saying that we are all adulterers in the heart, and this is a massive problem for us. So when we come to a text that reveals that our adultery of the heart, which is first and foremost our alienation from God and our self-centered desire to put our needs above other needs, has in fact impacted a certain relationship in our life so that that relationship can no longer continue, the last thing we should do is try to justify ourselves based on the circumstances of that relationship. Do you hear what I'm saying? There is by all means forgiveness for divorce. People who are divorced can be Christians. But part of that forgiveness is contingent upon believing you need to be forgiven. Yeah? And you can't do that if you're going to say that I was justified in divorcing that horrible person and that blah, 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 right? Because then you're actually just being the one, you're being the judge. And that's kind of Jesus' entire point. What he wants us all to do before this text is to acknowledge just how bad our situation is and just how much we need to be saved. Just how much we are, in fact, children who have nothing to offer and need to be plucked up from the danger in which we have put ourselves. Which is why in the following text, Mark tells us there was a time when they were bringing the children to Jesus. And his disciples didn't like this. They rebuked the people who were doing that and said, don't bother the guy, he's busy.
We're busy, dreadfully busy.
But when Jesus saw this, he became indignant. That means royally ticked off. And he said, let the little children come to me. Do not hinder them, for to such belong the kingdom of God, the reign of God, but not because they're so awesome and humble, because I tell you, I have never once met a humble child. They are not an example for us because of how great they are, how quiet they are, how submissive they are. They aren't any of these things. They're us, only more obnoxious and less intelligent. I'm talking about my kids, not yours.
I think I'm the only one who knows it.
I mean, really? Yours are better? Really? To such belongs the kingdom of God because they are in need of it. Yeah? And that's what our God does, is he gives to those who are in need. And they're young enough, at least, to know their need. To know that when someone gives them something, this is good. We all get older and then we're like, no, I'm gonna do it. I ain't taking no charity. Yeah, but that's just it. Salvation's by charity alone. So Jesus says, truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom like such a child cannot enter it. Because the only way to receive the kingdom is through faith alone as a free gift. And all of that driving home of the absolute good, evil, black-white line about marriage and how perfect marriage ought to be in this world, and the whole point being that nobody can handle what Jesus says when Jesus says the law as it was from the beginning. That what was going on in Eden is not something we can maintain now, and that the hardness of our hearts is constantly getting in the way of us trying to keep that law, even when we love that law, which as Christians, of course, we most definitely do. Which is why we should uphold and laud marriage as what it is, and we should try to encourage our children to marry in such a way that will not lead to divorce, which I would say requires a total rethinking of how, when, and why we have our kids getting married these days, as opposed to just throwing them into college and having them marry whoever they happen to have sex with, which is what happens a lot, if you're paying attention. Just saying. And as for the Jesus never spoke about homosexuality thing, it seems pretty clear from this text that he thinks man and woman become one flesh, and that one flesh can't be separated, that this is a work of God. Procreation, no doubt, is that one flesh reality, and the reason why divorce is bad is because it takes the parents away from the child whom they have created, and that just should not be broken up. That's the general idea. Now, if any of the law condemns you, you have one place to go, the cross of Jesus. Flee there. He will forgive you, right? But freedom from the law's condemnation does not mean we reject what the law says in terms of its design of creation and its teaching about the good and evil, which as Christians we still pursue in this life. Even as we recognize that we're all a bunch of babies going
I told you.
Like, for all the wrong reasons, and God's like wiping our bums and feeding us the food and preserving us, and more so is going to actually have us grow up one day when he says, come out of that grave, I raise you from the dead. And we'll like know even as we are known and be able to enjoy it. Yeah? Oh, I think that makes sense. Hey, if you like what we do here at Worldview Everlasting, you can always support the show. $5 a month goes a long way toward making that possible. And by the time this has come out, that $5 a month should have revealed to you a new content that isn't me, which is totally cool. And hopefully we'll have even more of that kind of stuff coming down the pike in the future. You can always like the show, subscribe to it, share it on your Facebook page, and that kind of thing, because that's a way to rock on.
Hey Anastasia, what are we going to see?
A stupid big hot dog. A stupid big hot dog.
What? That? That's the Wienermobile.
No, it's not.
You guys have no idea how special you are. You get to see the Wienermobile. This is like a once in a lifetime experience, children.